Okay, welcome everyone to Becoming Us. This is a program brought to you by BetterHelp, a provider of virtual therapy sessions. I'm Bambi Francisco Roizen, and with me this month is Amanda Smith. She's the BetterHelp therapist who will be helping facilitate our conversation. So, Becoming Us is a series focused on who we're becoming in this new normal. And this is a group discussion for those of you who are new. We started off with Amanda, the therapist, and she's going to provide a clinical overview. And then around 11:30, we will open it up for discussion, and hopefully many of you will feel compelled to share, but please don't feel pressured to do so. You can always just sit back and listen to the conversation. Now, we want you to share though, because it's actually quite a healing process. So verbalizing your feelings is extremely cathartic. Some say it's like meditation. It liberates you to the present. And from a neurobiological standpoint, what you're actually doing is you're connecting your amygdala with your prefrontal cortex. And that process is actually separating your emotions from your actions. So think about it this way. If you're driving and you see a yellow light, you slow down before you make the decision of whether you go forward or go right or left. In the same way, when you're verbalizing your emotions, you're slowing down before you take action. And so many of you with kids, I'm pretty sure you do this often. You say, use your words. And so what you're doing is you're actually expanding their vocabulary, for one, but you're really exercising and developing their mental resilience. So hopefully for those of you who are going to share on this topic, this is going to be happening for you as well, that you'll be exercising your brain muscles. So what is the topic this month? It is work-life balance. And many of you are probably saying 2020 is not the year of balance. I mean, if anything, this is the year of radical imbalance. And it's true, it's a bit like the Twilight Zone. And I often think of that band, Wang Chung. I know it's a 1980s band, so I'm sort of dating myself. But it's from this drama series, if you're familiar, called The Walking Dead. And in the very first episode, they play the song. So the very first episode, if you're familiar, it's Rick is the protagonist, and he wakes up and there's zombies all around, and then at the very last scene he's in a tank, and then there's zombies all around trying to get into the tank, and of course he's feeling extremely defeated and he's feeling nihilistic, and it's a bit of a cliffhanger. You have no idea what's going to happen, and then this song comes on by Wang Chung, and it goes, "Welcome to my world, welcome to my only world." Do you guys know it? Anyway, yeah. So the lyrics are really about somebody who's lost in space, and he's riding on a space junk, and he's looking for certainties beyond. And so, in other words, it's a song about being in a fog, being in balance, trying to find normalcy, trying to find balance. So if we can learn anything from The Walking Dead, it's that we're pretty resilient. Even we can get used to nightmarish normals like zombies. My husband often says that if we had a zombie apocalypse, I'd be well prepared. But any tragedy and any drama really involves these characters that go through these nightmarish normals. So radical imbalance, these struggles. And from there, then you get to accepting these struggles and then learning. And then finding some balance, not so much in the circumstances, a change in circumstances, but a new balance from a change of character. So as you watch this video, because we always play this video, as you watch this video of the events that are changing our life, think about how your character has been changed, and maybe how your character is sort of becoming more in balance. So this session is about finding work-life balance, but I want to posit that maybe it's not about finding work-life balance in our circumstances, but finding balance in our character. So, and accept that maybe this time we're still in a period of radical imbalance. So as Amanda leads us through, how do we navigate and thrive and accept the circumstances we're in, the imbalances in our life, so we can balance a little bit. I think I want everyone to keep in mind that, again, maybe it's not so much about balancing our circumstances, but what we should be striving for is balance in character. So before I hand this over to Amanda, I do want to thank BetterHelp, because BetterHelp is the sponsor for this series, and BetterHelp has just been killing it in 2020. They are a virtual therapy session therapy provider. They're all over the country. They have thousands of therapists. They are extremely convenient and affordable. If you ever see a therapist once a week, you will know, if you look at the prices, BetterHelp is far more reasonable. And also you can use BetterHelp 24/7, asynchronously, and in the comfort of your own home, of course. So thank you, BetterHelp, for supporting this program and supporting us as we go through this period of imbalance in 2020. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to Amanda, and then we'll open this up at 11:30. Amanda, take it away.
Okay. Hi, I'm Amanda. I am a therapist for BetterHelp, and I run a groupinar also on BetterHelp, which is very similar to this. The groupinars that we run, they have a chat portion only, so there's no video or that component of it. It's not that interactive, but there is a chat component that's become really, really helpful for people. And I have been running their Self-Care 101 groupinar for well over a year. And so when the pandemic hit, I also ran a couple of extra groupinars, kind of focusing on the pandemic and things, how we can control that and those kinds of things. And so I have had a couple of conversations with everybody that I counsel. That's what we've been talking about too. I mean, everybody, that's been something that's been coming up as well. So I have had a lot of experience with talking about people about work-life balance. I myself have had to adjust and had some work-life balance stuff. So yeah, so I'm happy to be here and to share some information with you guys. Hopefully it'll be something that you guys can relate to and resonate with. And then I think it's great that we're just going to be able to have an open conversation, because I think that it's so important for us to feel part of a community and really understand and hear where other people are coming from as well. I think that's been what's been so helpful in my groupinars, has been that connection that everybody kind of finds with each other. So I'm going to go ahead and get my slides going up for you guys. Let me go here and okay, so I'm Amanda Smith. Hello and welcome. My name is Amanda Smith. I'm a clinical psychotherapist in North Carolina. I am a clinical social worker, and I'm also a certified clinician. And so I have a private practice that I run in-person sessions, and I also do telehealth sessions on BetterHelp. I've been doing that now for about 3 years. So I started doing that pre-pandemic, and then of course during the pandemic that just became a more sought after service. I run the BetterHelp Self-Care 101 weekly groupinar, and that is something that's on Wednesdays. If you're a member of BetterHelp, or even I think during the free trial, I'm pretty sure you have access to that. It's what I was saying before. It's an hour of just basically a psychoeducation presentation, and we talk about all things self-care. So I think I talk through the lens often of self-care. I specialize in my practice in treatment of anxiety. I treat all different kinds of things. Lots of people come through the door with lots of different things going on, but I have specialized experience in education and treating anxiety, and I try to look through things through the lens of self-care. So if you ever have been in any kind of, heard anything about the treatment of anxiety, a lot of times we talk about coping skills and ways that we cope with things. I like to look at it also through the lens of self-care, because self-care is all about taking care of ourselves. And so anything that we do to help ourselves is actually self-care. So anything that we're doing, basic day-to-day life, like, self-care, I think we put it in this box and we say, okay, self-care has to be this big, grand thing, but really self-care is all about taking care of ourselves. So I like to kind of maximize that potential, saying, this is how we cope with stuff, but also this is how we're taking care of ourselves. So you'll see that embedded in my presentation and throughout. So I specialize in that, and I practice what's called cognitive behavioral therapy. If you were in one of Hillary's presentations, she covered a little bit about this: thoughts, feelings, and actions. She and I are very, very similar on that. I'm a thought-based therapist. I believe how we think affects how we feel, and that affects how we act. And so that's always embedded in all of my presentations. That's the very, very basis of that. I don't have to go into a huge presentation about cognitive behavioral therapy, but that is the meat of that. And then also what's called solution focused therapy. And that's looking forward, looking at the solution, looking at what we can build from, instead of analyzing why we might be in a certain place or why we might have certain things going on in our lives, looking at what we have and how we can move towards working into a solution, right? So there's different ways to approach counseling. One is kind of, let's dissect a problem and let's analyze it. And another is, let's take what we have, move forward, and put pieces together to find a tangible solution. And I think that's sort of what we're all kind of vying for right now in the pandemic. So what we're going to talk about, Bambi and I kind of talked a little bit about this and decided kind of some subtopics to talk about. So there's really 3 points that kind of come to mind when I'm looking at a work-life balance, establishing that work-life balance. With the pandemic, and just in general, uncertainty is what really gets in a lot of our ways when we're dealing with having to create any kind of structure or any kind of balance, or really make any kind of moves in our lives for bettering ourselves. The uncertainty always gets in the way. So we're going to talk a little bit about uncertainty and how COVID-19 has absolutely brought about extra uncertainty that we kind of have to deal with as well. And then we're going to talk about shifting our mindset. What Bambi was saying about the survival kind of mindset. And when you're in a crisis, I'm a crisis person. I'm all about being able to navigate things. And there's a lot of shifts in this. There's a lot of pieces at play where during COVID-19, we've been going through crisis, and then we've been in the long haul. So it's all about figuring out where are we and how can we shift our mindset so that we can move forward. And that really gets into this idea of what we can and can't control. And so we'll talk a little bit about practicing radical acceptance, which is a psychological concept that really just talks about how can we really accept those things that we cannot change, and then work to change the things we can, which I think has also kind of been embedded in a lot of the conversations that you guys have been having with some of the other clinicians and other presentations. So when we're talking about uncertainty, it's difficult to maintain the same productivity and efficiency without those same structured elements of consistency and structure. So, I think about I was working, last year was my last year working in public education. I was a school counselor. I was not sure if it would be my last year, but the pandemic helped to really solidify that for me, going into private practice full time. And when I was working in the schools, and when we went to remote learning in the schools, like all of a sudden, that was a huge shift, huge shift for teachers, for myself. And then, we could not necessarily do the same things that we were doing when we were in the office, all those kinds of things. And one of the biggest things was we didn't really know, like at first when the schools all shut down, we thought, okay, we're going to plan for 2 weeks out. We're going to be out for, let's say, 2 weeks. Well, 2 weeks of remote learning looks a lot different than what turned out to be going on a year plus. So it was really, really hard for us if we had known, then maybe we could have decided how to do that. So we were all over the place with like what we were doing and our expectations. And I think that really hit with lots of different people that I've talked to too in work, where you could try as hard as you could, but without knowing what was going to happen, it was really hard to plan or prep for the future, and ended up doing a lot of things over and over again because we kept having the same start 2 weeks until we figured out we better plan for the long term. That adaptation can be tricky because the changing nature, right? Even right now, when I'm looking at the school perspective, because I know that's something that is sort of happening all over the country and all over the world. Let's go back to school. No, we can't. With all those things that are changing, it's hard to really really have any concrete plan to find any kind of sense of stability or structure. And I think that applies to lots of different, in all different careers. I'm using education as an example because it's a prominent one right now in the news and all those things. But in everything, it's been, how do we adapt to this? Right? If we had known that this was going to be this way for this long, we may have done things different. So we have to kind of go with the flow, but also sort of plan for the future. And that's really difficult. We have to remember also to adjust to those routines within the routines. This is something that I experienced, and also lots of people I was counseling experienced. When people, were maybe working from home, there's things that we took for granted that let's just say, I know everybody's in different situations, so not everybody started working from home at this point. Not everybody, everybody had differing situations, but a lot of people's work environment changed. And in that, shifts from walking down the hall and being able to talk to a coworker and run something by them versus having Zoom meetings. Everything in those little tiny things made a huge difference, right? A huge difference. So if your work environment changed, little things change, things that we don't remember, right? And so we had to do those things on our own. You might have you could go into your job and you had or your business or wherever you were working, and it was very structured, and you could say, this is my work schedule. Working from home changes your work schedule. You have to establish those work hours, right? We have to adapt to technology adjustments. Having a meeting, all of a sudden, there was the possibility that meeting might not work if your Zoom didn't work or if the other person's Zoom didn't work. So there was this understanding that, hey, these things are going to go smoothly. Now it's not so smooth, or maybe it's smoother. There's office changes, shifts in family roles, right? So we have to think about that. Those things changed. You're talking about parenting and kids being at home. All those things changed, and some shifts in family roles changed. Limitations to our lifestyle needs, right? So not being able to go out and, enjoy dinner like we used to, or have access to some of those same things that we had. Some things became more accessible and some things became less accessible. Budgeting adjustments, whatever that looked like. The mental health field is, caught the kind of boom of really, getting lots of attention and energy from this pandemic. Lots of other industries really suffered and struggled. So everything changed. Everything was changing, and it changed for all of us in different ways. And then changing to those even our recreational routines, right? Not being able to physically go work out or go to the gym and all those kinds of things. And those things all affect our balance, and they're all pieces of uncertainty that we have going on and that we have at play. One thing I'd like to note with this also is I read an article, it was a while ago, that was talking about this whole idea that we're all in this together, which we absolutely are. And I think that that's a really amazing phrase that I think a lot of us have definitely gravitated towards during the pandemic. But there's also the idea that all of us are really in different situations as well. So we're all in this together, but we're all handling this in different ways. We all have different things going on. We have different roles, right? So working in the school system, I don't have children. So all of a sudden, I am in a whole different bracket than the people who I'm working with who do, because now they have to do this and I don't have to do this. We all have different things going on. And so we're all affected differently. So yes, we're all affected, but every single person has way different situations and circumstances that they need to kind of take into consideration. And it's important for us to take all those things into consideration. So when we're talking about shifting our mindset, this is something that I really, really personally kind of identify with in many ways. And I think it's very important. So, when we're in an emergency situation, you're going to be in survival mode. Okay. So if you go into the emergency room because you broke your arm, you're going to go in and you're going to have an emergency response. It's going to look different than when you go back for a checkup at your orthopedist to see how your cast is doing on your arm after that, right? Like it's a whole different feel, whole different vibe, different resources, different energies, different approaches, right? So when we're in an emergency situation, we do things differently than when we're doing things in more of a thriving or recovering kind of mindset, right? So in a survival mindset, we're going to look at there's an immediate need to adjust, right? There's little room for flexibility. We have resources might not be available. We have limited time for planning and prep. We just have to go, 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 right? And that adrenaline kicks in. So our survival instincts are enacted and our panic can kind of ensue, right? And so this is where I have plenty of energy. I'm not tired. I could spend 24 hours waiting in line at Costco to make sure that I have enough toilet paper. I mean, I'm on it, on it, on it, on it, on it, right? I've got this going. I've got to do this. There's no, that only lasts for so long though, because after a while it gets old and your energy starts to be depleted, because when you start being in things for the long haul, right, then you have to take into consideration your daily life is still going on, right? There's still stuff that you have to do. There's still things that have to be done, things that have to get paid. I mean, you can deal with a crisis in a short period of time, but long haul is a lot different. The long haul is future oriented, right? Then we start worrying about preserving our resources, right? And then we start worrying about that planning and prep and adjustment. Those things are essential. Those things become essential, right? So survival, we got what we got and we got to deal with it. Thriving, we've got to plan and prep and reach for things and put things away and do different things. It's a whole different mindset and a whole different approach. And our body and our mind start to adjust to that, right? So in a survival kind of place, that can kind of incite sort of a panic, adrenaline onset, crisis, anxiety. It sort of breeds that anxiety. And as things shift into that long term, that can shift into more of a depressive kind of state, right? We're more like, okay, this is how this is where we're going. Okay, so if we can intentionally shift our minds in that and be prepared for that and recognize where we are, we can sort of combat those depressive symptoms. We can sort of say, okay, now I'm going to get ahead of the game and I'm going to start moving myself into that mindset before that mindset consumes me without me knowing it. So that's sort of in shifting our mindset, accepting those things, right? And that gets into radical acceptance. So radical acceptance, it's a concept developed by Marsha Lanahan, who is amazing. And she really did a lot of work, what's called dialectical behavioral therapy. It's very similar to cognitive behavioral therapy, but it's basically a model of practice that really just talks about, hey, here's where we are. Here's what's in front of us. It's very important for us to accept those things that we can't change, and we can accept things that we can change. And realizing that there are some things that we can't control or fix. There are just some things that we just can't control or fix. And in a world that I'm sure lots of you guys are entrepreneurs and very, very creative thinkers and innovators, and I want to fix everything. I'm a fixer. I love it. And it's really hard when you can't fix things, when you thrive off of fixing things, but there's certain things we can't change or fix. And you can get stuck very easily if you can't move past that, right? So accepting things without agreeing with them is very, very, very important. So that is where, you can accept something and still feel like it's not great, right? I can accept that this is the way my life is now without enjoying it or liking it or feeling happy about it, right? I can say this sucks, but I can accept that it's happening. Because once you accept that something's happening, you can take your energy from trying to change it to trying to move forward and move on and move into that. So that's accepting those things that we can't control, and it allows us to change the things that we can. So when we're looking at the things we can't control, I just made this graphic, threw some stuff up there. This is stuff that I have heard from other people or that myself have gone through. So in the red, these are some things in general with the work-life balance in the pandemic that we cannot control, right? We can't control social distancing, quarantine measures and mandates, right? We can't control whether or not our business is not able to operate due to, governmental restrictions, those kinds of things. Can never control other people. Sometimes we can't control changes to family roles and responsibilities, whether our kids are home or those kinds of things. Travel restrictions. If your job requires you to travel, one of my best friends is a clinical research associate, and she literally would travel 4 days a week, and she's been grounded since March. So that's been totally different for her. Her whole job is different, and they've had to get really creative. We can't control the virus. We can't control schools. We can't control the economy, but we can control how we take care of ourselves. We can control how we adapt to those family changes, right? So we might not be able to control the change, but we can control how we adapt to it. We can try new hobbies and recreational activities. We can control our attitudes. We can control our routines, right? Our work ethic, how we manage our time, the way we interact with others, and we can control our reactions and our responses. That's the biggest thing. We have total control over our reactions and our responses. So while we might not be able to control any of these other things, we can absolutely control how we deal with them, how we navigate with them, how we think about them, which will affect how we feel. And that will hopefully motivate us to make some kind of progress instead of getting stuck. So this is kind of, the end of my presentation, but all of that together, I think the biggest culmination of this is to look at what aspects of my or your personal work-life balance are out of your control and what things can you control. Because hashing this out and figuring out all those pieces is going to really give you whatever's inside of your bubble of the things you can control or the things that you can put your energy towards. And that's going to feel a lot more rewarding. It's going to give you a sense of kind of purpose and passion in a world that's so chaotic and uncertain. So that's what I kind of wanted to focus on today with establishing work-life balance. And so now I guess we'll open it up and we can talk about this as a group. And I'm happy to, listen and consult with you guys as much as you guys would like to.
Thanks, Amanda. Well, usually I call on Dawn to sort of give me sort of an overview of what you thought of Amanda's slides and some of the direction she wants it to take this conversation about things that we can control, things we can't control, and how we're adapting to change.
Thanks, Bambi, and thank you, Amanda. Appreciate your framing this for us. Work-life balance is a huge challenge for people pre-COVID, let alone during COVID, right? It's just a different type of balance we have to find. I think, as you highlighted in your last slide, it seemed almost like a great reminder. We all should know there are things we can control and certain things we can't control. For me, when I saw that, I kind of chuckle because sometimes I can't even control myself, and yet we try to control all those other things. I think to Bambi, your point earlier as well with the life-work balance, we're not talking about changing the circumstance, but we're talking about changing the character. I think when we, you can change the world one person at a time. And I think we have to start with ourselves. And I think that takes a little bit of effort and courage. I don't know if I shared this already with this group, but if you go back to the root word of courage, it's about the heart and the transparency. And if we don't have the courage to look at ourselves and to see what our weaknesses are, where we need help, then we can't get better. And so I think what you shared today, both of you, is an opportunity for us to look at ourselves in ways that we haven't thought about before, and then perhaps come up with more questions than answers, and then take the time, if it's important to us, to find those answers. And a lot of times, for me, I use the Bible as a great tool for discovering who I am. And what's really neat about it, you talk about the mindset, here's what we're talking about, the work-life balance mindset. And it teaches me to take every thought captive. And when I think about, the survival versus the thriving mindset, that's where you think, okay, if I prepared my mind for something to happen, even if I can't control it, what I can't control is me. So for example, this morning, my grandson, I was taking him to school, and as I'm backing out of the driveway, he opens the car door. I freak out, right? I wasn't prepared for that one, didn't even think about that. I have child locks, but we've never needed, he's 6 years old. I get out of the car, run around to put him in. The car is still moving in reverse because I hadn't put it in reverse. Jump back in the car, put the car in park, turned around. And the first thing I wanted to do was scream. Well, I didn't, because I know he doesn't like screaming. And I think, this COVID thing and all these other we all have our stuff. That's my stuff for this morning. We have to be prepared. And if I didn't have the mindset to know that, okay, my grandson doesn't like yelling, he doesn't respond well to that. In truth, it wasn't his fault I didn't put the car in park. I had to look at myself. And I have to think, okay, now I got to handle kid locks on my car again, which I hadn't had to do in forever and a day. So I think your points are great. I think, Bambi, to your point, work-life balance, it really has to go to character. Because if we can make ourselves, in my case, you know, the image of God, which is a better human being for everybody else to love people, then I think we can handle some of those situations in a better way. And I'll use today's example as exhibit A. So thanks. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Bambi.
You have a response to that, Amanda? Any comments?
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I think you're right on about that whole mindset affects all things differently in every situation. And I love that because, you know, when we can pause and think about the way that we're going to respond to something, it absolutely can make a huge difference. And I think that in this situation, sometimes it's easy to lose sight of that, and it's easy to sort of just kind of keep going. But we got to sometimes just kind of take a refresh and say, okay, hold on, is how I'm dealing with this the most effective and most efficient way to deal with that? And then that is something we can control. I love that you tied that together for me. That's great. You know, you tied together the kind of something you can control is working to shift your mindset, right, and working to think about how you're thinking about things. So that thank you for sharing that.
Well, I want to bring somebody else new here because I want everyone, you know, exercising their brain and connecting their amygdala with their prefrontal cortex by verbalizing their emotions. So I want to bring in Alex so he can talk to you about, you know, what you can control, what you can't control. And maybe for me, and it sounds like with Dawn, what we can control is in terms of what we can control to balance, to find balance is to try to balance our character, not so much as our circumstances. So what have you done, or how has COVID been changing you with regards to what you can control, what you can't control, how you're building your character? Maybe touch on some other things that maybe jumped out at you that you saw from Amanda's slides.
Yeah, thanks, Bambi. Obviously I can't control, I manage a small portfolio of real estate, sort of like a small REIT, and we do higher end short-term rentals. I've set up the management company, and obviously I can't control city regulations or county or state regulations for that matter. And we did get shut down for a while, but I can control how I react. And so we had to change the business model. We've had to change the business model a few times, you know, so when they shut us down, we couldn't take, typically it's people going on vacation or they're celebrating a bachelor or bachelorette party, a corporate event or something. All that stuff ended. Even if it didn't, I wouldn't have been able to do it because the city shut us down. But they allowed for essential workers. They allowed for people that were displaced because of COVID. So we had to rewrite the descriptions of the property, market in different areas, and we managed to sort of limp along and still make ends meet until everything opened back up again. So I was able to control the way I reacted, and I think we managed well. My returns, I can't really control that my returns aren't to the investors what I expected them to be, but really, I'm comparing myself to alternative investments like the market. So if my investors had their money in the market previous to investing with me, well, they actually saved money because I outperformed the market during that time. So rather than trying to hit the numbers I was planning on hitting, I'm comparing myself to alternative investments. And so none of my investors were too upset with, they understood what happened, and they understood that they were in a better place with me than they would have been where they had their money previous to investing with me. So I was happy about that. And on the work-life balance, I didn't have such a problem with it. You know, I don't have kids, but lots of options were not there anymore. So work-life balance is difficult when you have tons of options to juggle around. But all of a sudden, all I could do was stay home, do what I could at work, and work out. And so, you know, I was eating healthy because I was going to the grocery store and cooking at home. And so I didn't have a real difficult time with the work-life balance because maybe boredom could have set in a little bit, but I didn't have a whole lot of other options like I would if it was business as usual. So the struggle with the work-life balance, I never thought it affected me quite as much. I had a similar routine. I've been working from home for over a decade. So I'm very used to it, but I do remember when I first started doing it, it was kind of a struggle because there was a lot of things to pull my attention away at home that I didn't have at the office. So I gather lots of other people that just started working from home are probably going through that struggle, but I have gone through it. And then you find a routine. Hopefully it's a good one. But I focused on working out every day. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. Obviously the gyms are closed, so I had to order some stuff to work out from home, or you go for a run or something. But yeah, the work-life balance wasn't too difficult. I imagine if you have a family and kids running around behind you and other things, it makes it more difficult to work from home and keeping them entertained. So I'm probably not the best one to speak to that, but you know, based on what you guys have said so far, those were my thoughts.
Yeah, well, and you made a couple of really, really amazing points, and one that I didn't even think about but totally resonate with. I think that this year might be the first year that I have ever not felt the shame of being a workaholic, right? Like I'm a workaholic, and like I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like, man, I haven't talked to my friends in a while, but I'm like, but that's okay because I don't have to talk to my friends in a while, you know? So it's like, I actually have lessened some of that feeling of like having to feel like I haven't hung out with people or anything like that. So it's been a super fresh breath of fresh air to work 60 hours a week and not feel guilty, you know,
Right,
in
yeah.
that respect. Yeah, you know, not like you said, not having opportunity means that I don't have to feel shame for not doing those things, which is, I mean, that's a very interesting point. And then also what you were saying about how you really restructured your business, which is amazing. And I think that that is absolutely, with or without noticing or thinking about it, you did kind of hash out the things you can and can't control, because when we get stuck in that idea of those things we can't control, like it really can breed sort of a stuck mindset, like a depressive mindset, sort of a like give up kind of mindset. But you can push through that and say, hold on, I'm going to totally flip my entire industry and change things up and do things completely different, and then create this new kind of element that you may continue to use in your, you know, in your business and everything. That's really where it comes from. Creativity comes from being able to accept those things we can't change and then focus and hone in on those things we can. Like, that's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, there's some things you can't control, but you can always control the way you react. And I think
Absolutely.
Adapting to your environment is sort of a big part of running a business. And if I just became depressed and started sitting around, you know, feeling down about the fact that my initial business model was shut down for the time being, I don't think that would sit very well with my investors. It's my job to brainstorm other ways and see what we can do to at least get by in the time, you know, and then,
Yeah.
and we did that. And of course we didn't hit the same numbers that we would have hit otherwise, but we did better than if we had done nothing, and we were able to float the costs of owning the properties and other stuff, and and eventually things will open back up. But we are open now. Now we're busier than ever. But there is word on the street that Newsom was going to come out next week and maybe take a few steps back. I think we were heading back into purple and then making a step back. But you know, I mean, these like you say, these are things that are out of the control. So.
Yeah, well, and you know, and I just want to say too, like this is a time when it's the only time I've really ever known it to be okay for things to shut down because they had to. And so it's like, you know, there are other people probably in your position or in similar kind of industries that it's okay to say, hey, I can't do this. Like, it would be fine to do that because that was the standard. And like to go above and beyond that and say, okay, like my business model was not going to work. I could have just said, okay, that's cool. I'll get that. That would have been fine. But to go ahead and do that is awesome. So just really give yourself a pat on the back for that, for just that creative energy that came from like moving forward.
Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah.
So does anybody want to sort of follow up sort of what Alex's story is? So Alex seems to have realized he can't control the circumstances of you know what's going on with the shutdown and his business, but he can change his business model and he can change things around at work, in his home life and exercise at home. But he also seems to be dealing with this work-life balance okay, because he doesn't have children. But anyone out there who with children, probably know work-life balance is a little bit tougher with the additional responsibility.
I've got a
But
puppy.
that's responsibility.
Bambi, I'm happy to make a comment.
Sure. Hey, Tom.
Bambi, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. Yeah, so, it's funny. I read a book prior to COVID hitting that Nir Eyal wrote. So I can't take credit for all this, but it was something called Indistractable. And my eyes opened up because I did not know what distraction meant. Distraction is actually the opposite of traction, right? I thought it was just, hey, I can't focus, but that's actually not the case. Distraction is I'm not moving towards what I want to move towards. And I think what causes us to have challenges in a lot of these times and to feel like in fear and anxieties, we're not moving towards what it is we want to move towards, or we don't have access to that thing that we need or want. And what shifted things for me is like I went through an exercise of saying, what is it that I really want to move towards? And Alex gave a great example of moving towards work, even creatively. I've been reading things about small business owners that are adapting and doing crazy things in terms of what they're doing with their businesses, and they're very resilient. And even though it's hard, they're gaining traction towards that thing that they want. When we had all these choices, I would argue that we were in the world of ultimate distraction. If we didn't want to move towards something, it was easy for us to create an environment where we were going, right? So anyway, now making it personal, like for me, right, I have two little kids, shifting towards working from home and being good at that. Finding time to actually work out, which I didn't have before, that you can do together. I just made a list of what are those things I want traction toward: being a better friend, seeing you guys more, or friends, which, honestly, weirdly, we weren't able to do or not able to do. Even if it was like something that was set into the future, whether it was a Zoom call or something, that every day I was making traction towards things that were important to me, even if it was going slower, made me feel better. If that makes sense. Like calling my parents more, right, was traction towards them, even though I couldn't be with them. So, I'm with my daughter right now, sitting outside because she wanted to do gymnastics in her social circle, because she's been deprived at 4 years old of being able to interact, and become more socially mature. And I just said, look, I'm not doing any more meetings at this time. I'm gonna take her to tumbling, and we're gonna do it. And even though it's that one thing I get to take my daughter to, even though we do other things together, it makes me feel like I'm slowly getting traction towards what she needs, which is social maturity. So it's weird. I can't go in there and watch her. I'm out in the car waiting, but it makes me feel better, like about the fact that even though it's slower, I'm going forward. Anyway, I've talked too long, but that mindset has really helped me a lot, a bit more about how to get through this.
I love that, and I'm really, really interested to read more into that, because that's so fascinating to me. And I think that when you said the traction thing, it does kind of play into what I was saying about the whole survival and thriving, right? So like our traction, or like our speed to which we're able to do things, has totally been changed. Right, Matt, in the counseling world, things have moved really quickly in a good direction. In some worlds, things have gone really, slowed down tremendously. And I think that definitely plays a role into it. The traction is a great word. I don't know another word for it. It's not the speed, but it's the the energy and the effort and the resources we have towards our goals are changed based on the circumstances. And so we kind of have to be able to refocus and say, where am I making progress, and does that look different than what I thought it was going to be? I love that. I think that's awesome. Like that's hidden for me.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom, for putting it that way. When I think of it too as sort of the distractions of all those things about all those events that we had to go to, even birthday parties. I mean, how many birthday parties you have to go to, then you have to buy the birthday presents, and then you have to get dressed and go to them. And when you have 4 kids, you have a lot of birthday parties to go to. But because I didn't have any distractions, I actually did get traction in writing my book. So I'm plugging in my book here. So during COVID, I was actually able to sit down and write a book, which I think outside of COVID, I probably would have been distracted. So, so thanks for that. But I want to get, I see Lauren and Winona and a couple of other folks too, but I know you guys aren't going to just jump up and talk. But again, this is all about exercising our brain muscles here. So we're verbalizing our emotions. So I want to get Winona first and to talk about, because I know you're actually in the startup world and you're also in real estate to some extent. So there's a lot of changes that you're going through, somewhat in the knowledge economy, but not really, really working with having to deal with the elements. So you're really affected. So I'd love to hear you share how you're dealing with COVID, how your character is changing, and what you're controlling in your life to make you a better person. And so,
yeah, I mean, yes to everything. The earlier comments. I was recently on a panel with Legals, the Female Quotient, and one of the ladies on there, we're talking a little bit about this issue, this notion of balance, especially during these times. And she said something interesting. Well, I like the way she put it. And basically, she said, so she lives by 3 things: 1 thing she can control, 2 things she can influence, and then 3 things she can't control. And so, as a startup entrepreneur, the things I can control and the things I can influence are critical. And you know, the work that we do with our modular real estate products and structures, affordable housing, and that kind of thing, I had to quickly determine if I wanted to be somebody that was seen as the typical startup disruptor to how the built environment gets developed, or if I wanted to be seen as an influencer and how things should be developed. I don't think disruption, I think before COVID, disruption and influencing were synonymous, and I disagree with that. And what I mean by that is, I've worked in both the public sector and of course now as an entrepreneur, and things seem to come a little bit easier when I started to approach our challenges through permitting and planning and zoning. If I was seen as an influencer of how we communicated and how we educated and collaborated versus how we could be combative. And I think there's so many challenges, social challenges that really put us in a combative space that we have to be mindful and meditative on how do we get to the next level, but being collaborative in that process. And from the balance standpoint, for me personally, what has really kept me going, especially in an industry that doesn't have a lot of women, especially women of color, and then just in a startup space, is to focus on optimism and gratitude versus the problem. And so those probably, usually it's about, out of the day, 11 hours you spend worrying about how you're going to control your business and control how people see your business. Those 5 minutes before bed for me, where I am completely immersed in gratitude and mindfulness and optimism, really just cuts all the other just junk. It's just junk and noise that's out. And so I was asked that. I was asked, recently, and also in an article we just did for Inc. magazine, interviewer, she said, with all this going on and pandemics and social, political issues and racism and all these things, how do you keep going? And I said, really focusing on being optimistic. Because I think when you're optimistic, you're very creative and you can solve problems versus being the problem. And I think also as an entrepreneur, if you can focus on being a problem solver and not being part of the problem, you tend to get more traction. I like that word, your impact tends to be greater and you tend to leave a footprint. So I think with that being said, it's all about identifying what is your role. Are you an influencer? Are you someone that only focuses on what you can control? Are you focusing on being an influencer? Or are you solely focused on what you can't? I will say that what physically has made me ill, gain weight, grew some gray hairs, was when I worked for local government and actually resigned from city government. Government is probably one of the least places that's innovative. I found that out the hard way. But what was difficult back in 2016 when I resigned was I thought it was a system that I could change because I grew up being taught to be a change agent. You know, I grew up being taught to make a difference, being creative. And it was working to a point. It was working to where I was doing so much stuff that other people didn't like it. And so my aunt told me something that really made me angry until it didn't. And she said, "You've done all you can do. You're not going to change the system. You need to leave. You can't control it." And for about 5 minutes, I was really angry at that. And then I realized she's right. That wasn't my role to change it. My role was to influence it. And because I couldn't change it, it just lifted. And I resigned and came to Atlanta at home to start a business out of the notion that I couldn't change that system, but I can definitely create a new one and influence that. And so that's what we're doing now. So this definitely resonates with me, Amanda. Everything you said is so timely. And it takes practice to know that you can't control everything. I think it takes practice to let go. It takes practice to practice knowing something new. So we know now with the changes that we needed to make from this pandemic, either you decide to do better or you go backwards. I'm not for going backwards, but it does take time. It does take patience. And I think it does take practice. And I think we have to give ourselves that practice and latitude as well to know that it does take practice. You just have to practice. You have to practice gratitude. You have to practice optimism. And at some point you start living it. And I think for me, that saves my life. I can't function in any other way but that. So thank you, Bambi. I know I've talked too much, but thanks, Bambi, for inviting me to this.
Right. And your hair does not look gray.
I cut that off. So that was shaved off a while ago. And that was blue, so yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comment to what Nona said?
I just liked what Winona had to say, and I was just thinking of a couple of quotes when Amanda was talking too, and reminded me of something that Charles Swindoll said, which was, life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how we react to it. And I think that's kind of a mantra that I live by, in addition to another thing that you had said about accepting things that we can change. And let me see. It reminded me of the serenity prayer, which was, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I think that's something all of us can reflect on.
Yeah. And I think that sort of goes back to what I said from the beginning, which is sort of we're living in radical imbalance with our circumstances, but what we can balance is our character. And Winona, when you were speaking, it reminded me, and those of you who have been on these calls know what I've said in the past when I've quoted that movie, Let There Be Dragons, where the protagonist says, he says to his friends, he said, before you start, they want to start a revolution. And he says, before you want to start trying to change the world, first, start changing yourself. And so, and you do that with a posture of gratitude and forgiveness, like you do every day. And I think that's how you actually influence people in that way, with that posture first. So thanks for that. I see Lauren there in purple or pink, or you're looking fabulous.
Thanks.
Right next to Winona, who has
Thanks
blue.
for having me, Bambi. Appreciate it. This has been super helpful, super interesting as well. From my perspective as a startup founder of a tech organization as a minority, work-life balance has never really been a thing to begin with anyway. But certainly I love what's been shared about, you control what you can and what you can't. When the pandemic first came out, the first thing I did was I bought a new day timer, because I was like, all right, everything's gone to hell, but I can control my 24 hours. But what ended up happening was that, just like Amanda was sharing about, was that inevitable, slide into workaholism, which is a super comfortable place for me. Of course, hitting my milestones is something that's fantastic and good. But what I found is that it actually created a situation of some pretty extreme isolation. And in that, it's something I didn't really notice for too long because I was busy, right? But in that, what I've learned that, I need to sort of, that balance between sort of acceptance and control is reaching out and making sure that I'm not isolated. And so asking for help. So maybe I can't control something or I can't change something, but possibly interacting with another human being would enable them to help me to change something. So those are the sort of two takeaways that I've learned from my journey with the lockdown and things like that. And I'm in Canada, so it is slightly different, but of course, very, very serious situation. Asking for help, becoming a part of a community, and just, checking in with each other. And what I really like is that with entrepreneurialism, there's typically this sort of like, you fail quietly, privately, and you succeed publicly. And with the pandemic, just the reduction of stigma around mental health concerns, the fact that basically everyone is struggling to some degree, it's actually quite a relief to be able to be a lot more transparent. And frankly, I think it's healthier than pretending everything's okay when it isn't. Another thing that came to mind just listening to everybody speak as well is the notion of creating, infrastructure and creating an environment. And congratulations, Alex, on getting a puppy. That's what I did when I was living in a very cold city, working from home. I've been working from home since 2006, and it was like minus 23 outside. So why would I leave, And that's of course bad for mental health. So I got a puppy for that reason, to make me go outside, to make me exercise. So I find doing things in community, as well as creating an infrastructure and those habits for myself to sort of force me to do things. I went to this seminar. I think it was the coach of the CEO of Lululemon. And he basically said, if you can't clean your desk every Friday afternoon, hire someone to come and set fire to all the paper on it. And that just, I've never forgotten that. It's such a dramatic example, but like it is, an effective way to ensure that the infrastructure you've created for yourself is going to ensure that you perform in a particular way. So yeah, my takeaways are essentially don't work that much, try not to sleep with your laptop in your bed, just, small things like that go a long way to sort of the work-life balance. But ultimately, I don't think it's where I'm at right now anyway. We're startup, tech founder, woman, minority, like it's not, there's almost nothing that we can do to, like, the emphasis has to be on the work right now. And that's okay. It's reasons and seasons, right? Once we're finished our crowdfunding campaign, I'm going to sleep for about a week. But that's the important thing to, I think, build in as well. And also acknowledge that from startup life as well, there's such an emphasis on production and hitting those milestones is a much higher priority than well-being. And I'm seeking to change that in the industry. Also, I'm a woman in long-term recovery, which means I've been sober from all mind-altering substances since 2011. And that's a real difference maker as well, because, nootropics and performance enhancers are such a norm. And I'm trying to shed light on the fact that that's actually not healthy or sustainable. We have way too many entrepreneurs killing themselves, and it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. So thanks very much for your time. I appreciate being here.
That's awesome. And I'll just say, recovery is one of the hardest things in the entire world to do ever. And so anybody who's in recovery is, probably that's the strongest, you're one of the strongest people that I would ever come across, because it's one of the hardest things to do. So kudos. That's awesome.
Thanks, Amanda. I will have to say as well, though, it's sort of like, I've been training my whole life for the pandemic, because it's like one day at a time. What can you control?
Yeah.
Self-care,
Controlling what can't control. Yeah.
Monitor your emotions, ask for help. So it's actually, I'm feeling quite lucky that I've been in recovery prior to this happening, because I just feel bad for people who don't have the tools that I do,
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. That's so great. And that's good that you can take those things that you've learned and apply them in other ways too. Like, that's awesome. That's really cool.
Amanda, I'd say as another, for me, as another practice in letting go and work-life balance and defining what that means for our family, and not being in control. Another, especially during COVID, during this pandemic, was gardening, urban gardening. And I tell you, you talk about that you're not in control. You try to grow your own and harvest your own food, and sometimes things work out and sometimes things don't. And sometimes you get things that grow that you didn't even realize you had planted. But you start to see really beautiful things happen when you focus on, again, growth, and literally and philosophically. And when we always wanted to do it, but life and then work and all that got in the way. And we said, okay, we've got to get more sun and get outside. And we started building more community around our front yard. And no other house on the street has the yard that we have created. But out of that, people will walk by, elderly individuals, people who were sick, who would say, you know, just walking by your yard has helped my mental health today. I had one older guy ask me for a cigarette, which I don't smoke. And then I said, well, I don't have one. Then he goes, okay, well, since you don't smoke, let me tell you this. You need to mix baking soda and vinegar to kill those weeds so that you can grow your vegetables. And he just left. And so you start meeting very interesting people who you just never know how you influence or impact by just saying hello or growing a piece of food and giving away free food to people who actually need food. You know, you just never know what people are going through. So that practice of growing and seeding and watching things grow didn't require us to really leave our home lifestyle, as because again, like Laura was saying, being a startup, that's complicated, but it did allow us to focus on getting back to the basics of living and working with your hands, but working with your hands in a way that created neighbors and community. And we had young people coming up asking how to grow stuff. How can I do it? You know, and so that meant a lot to us, just by letting go and watching things grow and not really. And then when you have some silly caterpillar that will eat your vegetables, you can't really get mad at it, because if you didn't have a caterpillar, you weren't growing your garden right, right? So like the pests were welcome friends, and so you learn a lot through. I just admire farmers. That's their whole life is about letting go and figuring out what works and what doesn't. When you have a deer eat all your food, you got to start all over. And to me, that's talk about resilience. I really commend them for their work, but that was just one outcome during this pandemic that has really helped us and brought us closer as a family, was to grow things, focus solely on just growth. And
that's so awesome.
And not
that's
anything else.
So awesome.
A lot of analogies between growing plants, growing, gardening, and raising kids. You do certain things and all of a sudden something else happens, and you're quite surprised. But they're a project, and it's something I want to touch on. I want to touch on Mark because I see him there, so I want him to comment on this. One of the things that you said, Amanda, was we're all in this together, and something also, Lauren, where you talked about how you have to recognize that we're suffering, you know, everyone is suffering together. And I wrote an essay, in normal times, we suffer alone, but in this pandemic, we're all suffering together. And that's changed my dynamic with my kids. I have one right there, actually. He's dying to get. And,
love it.
He wanted to make that cameo appearance. In fact, he wanted to stand on guard the entire time. And I said, that's actually going to be distracting to everyone else. So, but what I've had to do was, and I've had to tell him that we're all suffering here. And so we need to be more accepting of one another. And so I have to homeschool. My mom is here trying to help, and they're just at each other's necks. And so I have to remind them that we're all suffering together. And so and so we have to be calmer. We have to be calmer. And so, Mark, since, you know, I'd love to hear you talk about your relationship with your kids. If, you know, have you had to learn how to be more calm because you're all suffering together?
Well, I was gonna talk about something else. Bambi, what did you say at the very beginning? I like how you set all this up. You said something. Can you just repeat what you said at the very beginning of our session today?
The very beginning when I talked about balancing,
Yes, I'm sorry. It's like instead of trying to find balance between work-life balance is like trying to find balance within ourselves. Was that what you said?
Yeah, I was just saying we're just living in a time of radical imbalance, and it just seems like what we should be doing is accepting this imbalance, because we go into seasons of imbalance, and sometimes maybe we have to sit in those seasons of imbalance, and what we can, going back to what we can control or not, what we control is what we can balance is our character. And maybe we shouldn't be
Yes.
striving for this elusive work-life balance and chopping up our days, but what we should striving for is whole life balance through sort of a balance in character. And this time of imbalance is actually giving us that balance. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, no, I like the way you phrased it in terms of the balance of character. So I guess I thought sort of, we have this very unfortunate crises that we're all going through now. I imagine we're going to go through other crises in the next, decade or two. I don't think when COVID is over, we're going to be throwing away masks. I fear we're going to be wearing masks on and off for quite some time. And there'll be other types of crises, but they're not gifts, but they are opportunities to kind of rethink priorities. And so my life was, I used to travel an enormous amount. Like everybody else, I've gone to working from home, not like everybody else, but like some people, I've gone from working from home, I'm become a Zoomist. So anyway, it's kind of forced me a little bit and given me an opportunity to really think like what's important to me. Your life work can be as unbalanced or balanced as you want it to be. Although I realize there are some necessary trade-offs too. But anyway, it made me really appreciate, I think it made me appreciate more of my time with my kids because I could see them more, and the little things, the Cheerios in the morning and the walks in the afternoon. So yeah, I just sort of saw it, it's not a gift, but it's an opportunity. It's a forced opportunity, but it is an opportunity to kind of reassess, well, I've got 24 hours in the day. I had 24 hours in a day, by the way, prior to COVID. I'm going to have 24 hours in a day after COVID. How do I want to spend that time? What's really important to me? And at the margin, this crisis probably made me realize that I'd probably like to spend more time with my kids. I would be happy not to commute into work and travel as much for business, although there's some challenge. I enjoy some of that. But anyway, that was kind of what changed for me, my work-life balance. Yeah, it did tilt more towards life, and it gave me that opportunity to really rethink what's important to me.
Well, and I just want to say that that's beautiful, and it connects back to something that Winona was saying too, that I think is so cool. This whole thing about impact, right? So the things that we can control are so much more impactful, I think, right now than they were before. So when there's so many things we can't control in this world, this weird world, political, social injustice, all these kinds of things going on, coronavirus, gardening becomes something you can share with your neighbors that's really actually impactful because people need that food, right? Spending that time having that bowl of Cheerios with your daughter, that's an impactful thing that comes out of identifying those things that you can control. Alex was talking about changing his entire business structure, that came out of it, right? And so the things that I can control are so much more powerful to me, at least now, in terms of my character and all those things. Those things are so big and so great, whatever you're doing with it, whether it's spending more time with your family or investing yourself more in work. These things are making such a big difference. And I just think that's such a cool thing to kind of look at the impact of that.
Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah.
You made me think of this line from Kung Fu Panda. You guys are probably wondering what kind of movie junkie I am. I like watching Walking Dead and Kung Fu Panda. Anyway, you said something about a gift. So it made me think of, I think Master Sifu, I can't remember who it was, but he said, yesterday is history, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. That is why it is called the present. You guys remember that? I love that one.
Yes, that's a good one.
Today is actually a gift. So whatever's happening to you should be a gift. And I guess we should have that posture like Winona has, which is we should be very grateful for that, for all the gifts, and grateful for the garden. And I'm going to give that and share my optimism with my garden or with my kids or something. So I'd love to know what you guys are doing in terms of sharing whether it's sharing gratitude, sharing forgiveness. Sharing forgiveness is actually a great thing, I would think. That's really kind of cleansing. So anybody want to share any moments in the last 9 months?
It sounds maybe counterintuitive, but I'm sharing a lot of like what I'm finding difficult with my peers and my colleagues and my team. And just like the project that I'm working on right now, like I actually really, really care about it. It's like my heart project. I've been working on it for years and years. And I've been finding myself sort of like getting teary in business meetings and things like that. And instead of trying to like shove it down and pretend it's not happening, just being like super real with people, be like, you know, I'm just like kind of tired, or this happened, or whatever, and not going into the place of like super private information, but just a little bit more human. And as a result, what's happening is you know, like Brene Brown's all about the vulnerability, right? But like, as I kind of go first and be vulnerable, it opens up it gives people permission to be vulnerable with me as well. And then what happens is we establish a better connection. They have the freedom to be able to express anything that might be going on for them that's perhaps not ideal as well. We're able to function better as a team. My relationships are improving as well, even though it feels really uncomfortable to sort of go first. And what I've been hearing from basically everyone I've been talking to in the last like 2-3 weeks is that everyone feels alone in their own struggles until we have a conversation where we can basically say, well, yeah, me too. And then now all of a sudden no one feels alone, we feel connected. And then that sort of is the transition you were talking about, Bambi. Instead of like us having to face this all alone, we're facing it together. And so that's a practice that I'm leaning into recently, especially because it does feel extremely uncomfortable. And because I'm feeling, you know, I can feel like my heart warm up when people are like, oh, you know, this happened, my dog died or whatever. And then, you know, to be able to show up and support people and hold space for them and let them know, you know, we care and we want them to be well humans as well as do well, has been quite transformational in a very unexpected way.
I love that, Laurel. If I could say, I mean, when we're vulnerable, it just gives other people permission to be human too, and just open a little bit of a door of forgiveness and allow some room for error and just understanding.
Yeah. And Laurel, what you were saying earlier too goes along with that, because it's like, you know, I think that one of the silver linings, if you will, of all of this is that it kind of exposed us. We all had to be vulnerable no matter what. Like we kind of had to be like, yeah, like, you know, businesses were falling apart because there's something that made it all happen. And it was like transparency. Everything got thrown out there, like, right? Like just thrown up on a big screen for everybody to see. And we all had to kind of own our stuff. And in doing that, which is really not comfortable, and it wasn't great that happened, it sort of allowed us to all see that we have stuff and that it's okay to have stuff. And like, it opened us up to say, okay, yeah, like you said, it's refreshing to kind of know that it's okay to like fail or to not have everything put together all the time. And so I think that was a really positive thing, I think, that came out of some of this, that transparency and vulnerability.
Yeah, speaking of the vulnerability, the opening segment Bambi put together, it really brings into perspective how bad things can get. I mean, can you imagine if you were born at the turn of the century, if you were born in 1900 and you had to live through some of the events that took place between then and say 1970, you know, if you're born in 1900 and you died in 1980, the amount of stuff that you saw is pretty incredible compared to what I was born in 1980. And so, yeah, there was a few market crashes, but things go up and down. We had 9/11, which was awful. 3,000 people died. But I mean, compared to some of those things, if you were born in 1900, so, you know, I guess most of those people have passed now because nobody's really living to be 120, but I mean, interesting to talk to your great grandparents or whoever, great grandparents, in regards to how they weathered those storms, because some of the stuff we're dealing with today pales in comparison.
So true. So true. And we get in this kind of, I mean, I know I have a perfectionist mindset that has carried me very well, but also it's a source of stress when like things don't go right. And I'm like, oh, things are always supposed to go all right. And I'm not supposed to fail. I can't fail. But when you look at the way the world is and you realize that like things happen and people recover, and the resiliency in that, I think it kind of like makes it, okay, you know what? Like we can go through a whole lot of stuff and still kind of come out on the other end, and it'll be okay.
Yeah.
I think this was brought up in one of the earlier sessions, but living life, living minimally. I can't remember how she was saying it, but living with the bare minimum. And so we've been through a process. Well, I've been through a process, and some of you guys know because you've been on the call, but thinking about moving, and so or not moving. And so I've been like, oh, we're going to leave. Oh, we're not going to leave. Oh, we're going to pack, or we're not going to pack. And thinking about, oh, well, how are we going to redo the house? And then, oh no, how are we going to live in this new house? And so all these different expectations. And I've just been like this, like really just going on a roller coaster. And so I just have to feel like, okay, well, if I live in a box, that's not so bad. That won't be so bad. I can live in a box. Okay, I'll live minimally in a box. And not that we'll live in a box, but I'm just saying wherever I live, it's sort of, it shouldn't be about the surroundings. And you guys apply this to whatever situation you're having. But that has been, I have been, so right now I have a t-shirt on. I basically have 5 t-shirts and, sweatpants because I packed. So I have no clothes. So I'm living on minimal clothes. So I'm learning how to live minimally with minimal stuff. And it's great. I don't have to worry about what I'm wearing or have to defend myself or about what I'm wearing. And so it's, so living minimally was actually a kind of something I learned that helped me balance myself.
Yes, Mark Zuckerberg was onto something, huh?
Did he say, no, that was Jack Dorsey who said constraints are good.
Oh, no, I was saying, wasn't that the thing that he had just a handful of hoodie sweaters in his closet or something?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Who were always wear this like gray shirt, but that shirt actually I'm very gossipy on that part. I was like, not with those minimalistic. So I looked into the shirt he's wearing in his closet. Actually, each of them cost more than $2,000. So
wow.
So yeah. I was like, I'm joking about him all the time.
We can't really see you, but that's okay. We see a big L.
You do not want to see me. You mentioned that you only wear sweatpants and shirts. I'm telling you, I have not showered the whole week. Everybody are gonna blow away if they see me because I got sick this week. We moved from San Francisco to the wine country, and we're not used to the weather that it's hot during the day and super cold in the evenings. So we just got under the weather, and then so you do not want to see me.
That's okay. I'm sure you look beautiful. Maybe we should go around. Maybe this will open it up. There's a couple of things. This is such a resilient group. I always feel that, you just talk to a bunch of entrepreneurs and they're so optimistic, which is great, which is a great thing about that. But then we also talked about vulnerabilities. And I think that's also a good thing. Like Laurel said, is that, once you share that, there's actually something that outpouring of what's going on inside is not, we're not just packaging it like, okay, everything is just great. So, so I'll start, and I'd love to everybody to just talk about somewhere, where they feel vulnerable. So, so I am a mom, and I try to do really well as a mom. I've been a little bit too overbearing, like, okay, I have to make sure my kids are grateful and purposeful and all that. And well, I think I drove them nuts in one particular. So he kind of moved out into a tent. And so I'm not great. So I'm struggling with that. So it's, my work-life balance is how do I balance just trying to be forgiving, but also trying to, make sure that these guys can launch into adulthood. And so that's what I'm struggling with. Not that we have to go through, how I get out of that struggle, but I wanted to be vulnerable with everybody. So, got that off my chest. So not the perfect mom. So don't want to know if anybody wants to go around and share, and then we can end it on an upbeat note. But if everybody wanted to share what they're, where they're being vulnerable.
I'll go.
Okay.
So I'm in the middle of a breakup. It's like a pretty fresh breakup. which not just involves my ex-partner, but also his 2 kids as well. So there's like loss of quite a lot of people. My brother is an active opioid addict that was in recovery and was married and kind of looked like he was going to be okay there for a while. And he just relapsed and blew up his life. And I think he's homeless and using. I don't know exactly what's going on there. And I just launched my crowdfunding campaign 2 days ago. So it's been super intense. And of course, like that's a very public thing to be doing a crowdfunding because everybody can see like what the numbers are and that sort of thing. So it's a lot of pressure to perform in a short period of time. We decided to do crowdfunding just because the lack of VC capital that's available to women typically, I mean, we only get like 5%. Getting loans and things is more difficult being a self-employed woman as well. So we decided to go with crowdfunding. But so I waffle back and forth between being like so grateful for the community support and like the people who are showing up for me and like feeling like I've made a horrible public humiliation in terms of a mistake and doing this so publicly and just like drinking lots of coffee. So that's what's going on for me. Thanks.
Is that you, Alex? I can't tell. Look at it.
I was still thinking.
Okay.
I have the same mind with Alex. It's like, yeah, I can share. So my name is Li Ping, and I have 2 kids. One is 4, one is 1. So I moved from China in 2013 and started a cross-border business in 2016 at my current company called Docera, that they wanted to expand their consulting business internationally. So ever since, like, being an entrepreneur was really like stressful. Every day I was like, yeah, I think I'll just hang on more than one day, and then, you know, tomorrow I wanted to shut down the operation. And like, I don't know how many of you had the same feelings. I always think like, tomorrow this is it, and if I don't hit my numbers, this is it. But so far it's like always when it's a desperate and something shine lights on it and it keep me going. This year is pretty challenging. It's like I do not, so my parents are stuck, they're in China, like cannot visit because of the board closed. I haven't seen them for like over a year. And then we had a very abusive general manager for the China team, which almost destroyed everything. And there's one period of great, like I cried 5 times in a row during a week just because of him. So I ended up like depressed and got like anxiety and medication. So, but then like later we lost our biggest account like for the business. And then 1 month after we get rid of the general manager, and he went to the biggest competitor. So after left us, yeah, but so the good thing come out of this is our team is in a very good vibe, and I just hired new general manager. She sounds like amazing. So I have my hope. There's one more time. So one more time, like every time I'm just saying like, okay, like kind of one more day and give the one more chance. So this is how it had, you know, like make me go through like 4 years now. Like this is how it has been. Yeah, so that's about it.
People don't have to share what they're, if, you know.
I could share, Bambi.
Okay.
I'll bite off on that feeling like not such a competent mom. So I'm trying to balance right now. I have 6 children, 2 are in college, and I homeschool all of them. And I'm also a single mom, but I'm also trying to balance working at night, working during the day. And I'm in this crazy full-time accelerated doctorate program that's way above my knowledge base, and it's overwhelming.
Tammy, you're my goddess. I always feel like you can homeschool. Like I cannot even sit with my child for like over 10 minutes. I was like, how could she do this for, homeschooling 6?
Yeah.
You got to teach me.
Can I share, Tammy? I admire you so much on so many levels. When I think of what you shared and what everyone else is sharing, for me, I have a favorite scripture, 1 Corinthians 10:13, and God says that he's never going to give each one of us more than what we can handle. And so whatever it is we're each dealing with, and not to make light of any of it, because there's nothing to make light of our challenges, but there is a solution. And I think somebody said earlier, talking to some friends, getting some input and advice, that's helpful. I think of the phrase that I shared once on here before was seasonal blessings, but we also have something called seasonal challenges, and we all go through them. And it really piggybacks into what Winona said earlier, what we choose to focus on. Because if we all sat and focused just on the challenges that we have, and we all have them without a question, we could just have a breakdown every day if we're being totally gut level honest. However, if we share them like we're doing here, and then we focus on the seasonal blessings, the silver linings somebody mentioned earlier, those are the things that, gosh, we are blessed. Each one of us. We have 6 kids. Somebody can't have 1. We have a business. Someone doesn't have a job. We have, and I can go on and on. We all have our stuff. But I'm grateful for each of you who've shared what you've shared, to focus on optimism. Bambi, I'll steal off of your thread line of movies. My grandson and I, we watch a lot of superhero movies. Magneto is a bad guy, for those of you who don't know. He started out as if you know his history, one of his friends, his good friends, his best friend, shared with him, your power that you try to get through anger and hatred is what it is. But if you change it to love and kindness, using that same power, when he did that, his power just grew incredibly. And I think, again, going back to Winona, I'm very grateful that you've said, let's focus on the good things. And when you focus on the good things, we also get a peace, right? If we focus on the blessing of the day, I can exhale. So I'm honored to be with you guys. And I will be praying for each of your situations, because I think prayer is powerful too. So thanks.
I have them listed. Yeah, Mark.
Thanks, Bambi, for bringing us all together, and thanks, Amanda, for your comments earlier. I'm going to jump in a minute, but I like you, Bambi. I try to make sure I'm sure I'm not balancing work and life optimally, and I just try to do it a little bit better all the time. And so I just being part of this, it gives me a chance to learn from other people who are going through some similar things that I am too. So I very much appreciate this opportunity. So thanks, Bambi.
I want to read something from my book, but before I do that, I'm sorry, I wasn't planning on doing that, by the way, but but I think but what everybody said sort of made me feel like I needed to read this because it's really relevant. But I also wanted to give Winona and Alex a chance to say a couple of things too, if you wanted to. But you have to stay, Mark, you have to stay to listen to the book, that passage that I'm going to read. But did you have any words, Winona or Alex?
I could jump in. I after hearing Tammy and Lauren and the challenges they're facing, I guess I almost feel guilty trying to complain about my own, because I've been through times that are very tough, losing houses and girlfriends and family members and other stuff. But at the moment, I don't have anything that I really think is super pressing, not in comparison to some of the people that are around me, and nothing compared to what Tammy described or Lauren described. And then I have people in my broader network that are dealing with even more difficult things. I mean, I know everybody has their own problems, but I always try and put it into perspective. And I consider myself lucky. And at the moment, I don't have anything too trying. I mean, I have a bunch of personal stuff I'm working out, but I would almost feel guilty, putting them on you guys, because it's nothing. I consider that great. Although in the past I have dealt with it, but I appreciate Lauren and Tammy for explaining what they're dealing with. I can't imagine, dealing with 6 kids at home, or, trying to go through this crowdfunding thing while simultaneously dealing with a breakup and family issues with your brother. That is something much more difficult. It makes you a stronger person. And, if I've learned anything, it's eventually you get through it and life moves on and everything tends to work out in the way it will. So, but thanks for putting together Bambi and asking.
Winona, I still have that passage to read, but Winona, did you want to share something?
Sure. I'll be. One thing I would say to the moms, I'm not a mother, although like Alex and Laurel, I have 2 dogs and a old cat, and some fish and bees now outside. But I will say that my mom just revealed something to me. So she lives with us, and her 9-to-5 job is helping us startup entrepreneurs in the house get groceries. So kudos to her. But she revealed something last week, a couple of weeks ago, as a mom. And I didn't know this. And she told me, she said, the one thing that I was always concerned about every day as a mother was that I would live to see you become an adult. I could not fathom leaving you too early and that you wouldn't be ready to launch. And I thought, wow, that's a heavy load for someone to carry, and for moms to carry, to make sure that their kids are always okay, and that you raise them enough so that they can launch and be okay on their own. And so I told her, I said, well, you don't have to worry anymore. And I thought we had made a breakthrough. And then she goes, actually, mothers worry all the time, even when you're older. So I say, well, at least I tried. But I just thought that was interesting for her to share, that was her concern as a mom, was nothing else but making sure that I was old enough to take care of myself. So that just say congratulations to the moms who are doing what you're doing. She was a single mom, by the way. But I had my grandparents, but she was a single mom. So I think other than that, I will say the things that I'm learning and kind of struggling with, excuse me, goes back to, and Don, you brought it up again, I appreciate that, was the optimism piece. I haven't seen my grandmother since March, since all of this started, because she's Alzheimer's in a nursing home. Between running a business and running a business where everybody wants you to finish things quickly, which I guess is every business, all your clients, but things don't happen that way, especially during a pandemic. And so my influence was more than I thought. And what was happening was I was so focused on trying to get everything done quickly and on this timeline that was just not happening. And my husband, who's my business partner, we sat down and he said something interesting, and he said, and this was confirmed through 3 other people last week, 3 other strangers, which was interesting, that don't focus so much on the timeline, focus on the quality of the product and service, and focus on you as and your quality. People will nitpick at everything. That's just owning a business. But what they will remember is how you treat them and what you didn't do well. So I think the pandemic has created this space where people at some point to slow down, whether you like it or not, and focus on quality of relationships and quality of the moment and quality of the work versus how quickly you can do something. So if it's overwhelming, if you start to focus on the quality of what you can do within that hour versus how much you can do, you start to feel a little better. And so I've had to really talk myself into that every day, because our projects are taking so long, we're almost done. But also with my grandmother, if I focus on what she has taught me versus what am I going to, then I know that I actually feel better, and that's the gratitude that it's easy for me to say, but I'm practicing it as well. I don't want anybody to think that I figured it out, because I haven't. But I do know that it does work in the moment. And so for me, this is all a practice, and I'm so glad to listen to everyone's stories and learn about what you're dealing with and what you're practicing, and how and just know that you're not alone in this at all. And don't diminish what trials you go through. And Alex, that goes to you. Don't think that because it might seem less than somebody else's, it's not. It's all relative. So don't diminish your being overwhelming. Don't diminish being a mother. Don't diminish any of that. And I'll end with this. I saw a tweet the other day. A lady said, it's not that we're lazy. It's just that we need time to do what we do well and to do only what we can do at the given moment. And I thought that was pretty interesting for her to say that.
And you know what? I have to say one thing to that, because it reminded me of earlier, bringing this full circle. Find the traction within that, right? Like find your traction in just producing quality and not worrying so much about the pace and like, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And like, not having enough time, like there's traction, and slowing down and focusing on the quality of that. So I think that just resonated with me, and yeah, cool.
Well, I think this will resonate with everyone too. And Winona, you just made me think of my favorite, Fellowship of the Rings. Everybody here heard this multiple times, where Gandalf says, I'm not going to do Gandalf's voice, but all we have to do to decide is what to do with the time given to us. So, right. But I wanted to share this because everyone's talked about burdens, but how we can look at burdens as gifts, because my book is actually called Unequally Yoked. It is about burdens and how we can either look at them as burdens or gifts. So I wanted to read this, and because I hope it's helpful. And I'm happy to send a signed copy if you guys want a book. But here, this is, I'll just read this. It's not too long. We are all yoked to someone. A yoke is a wooden cross piece, and it binds two oxen, or just binds people metaphysically. We're all yoked to someone, probably something, and certainly society. It's our choice to feel oppressed and cheated by our yokes, or to embrace them and channel them as the wellspring of our meaning and purpose. What do I mean that burdens can be a blessing? Well, let's start with something to which pretty much everyone can relate: kids. In a post-agrarian economy, kids are almost a pure loss, yet most parents would say they're miraculous blessings. Women often find the yoke of their kids heavier than the men who planted their seed, but it's clearly a weight most women ultimately want to bear. Moving beyond kids, the labor market may seem terribly inefficient and unfair, yet many appreciate the opportunity for employment. And the yoke of their employer is a privilege and opportunity to have a chance at a sense of agency, self-sufficiency, and wealth. Boundaries may seem restricting, whether they be walls between nations, or male and female bathrooms, or lines of authority between adults and children. But those boundaries ensure order and are in many ways the markers of society itself. So in fact, one of the great ironies of life is that constraints can actually create freedoms. So it just is about, how do we want to look at our burdens? You know, because we'll all have burdens. We're never going to get rid of our burdens. It's just, how do we want to look at them? And trust me, if you want to get rid of one burden, you'll find another one. So have an approach like Winona, and if you can be grateful and forgiving entire life and feel optimistic, then those burdens will always feel like gifts and seem like gifts to us. So I want to thank everyone. This was a great discussion. It's always so helpful for me. I definitely work out my amygdala and prefrontal cortex. So hopefully everyone else has done that as well, because that's supposed to be helpful in healing. And we're going to do this again with Amanda. Thank you so much for preparing all of that, and for all of you for just stepping up and sharing. And hopefully you'll join us again in 2 weeks, where we will have Amanda again talking about work-life balance. And then in November, we talk about purpose. Also, please, if you know anyone for whom you think this conversation would be good for them, this discussion, you know, it's free, it's complimentary. We'd love to, you know, help them or hear their story as well. So, because we're all in this together. All right, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. It's a great community. You guys are awesome.
Thank you, Bambi.
Thank you, Amanda. Thanks, Bambi.
Okay, thank
Bye,
you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.